Let's go straight over at the beginning of a busy first hour to the leader of the Social Democratic Party, William Clouston. Hello, William.
Hi, Kevin. Hi, great to be here.
Thanks for coming on. This is what worries me at the moment, William. Now, you're a new party. I like the cut of your jib, if I may say so. I like some of your members.
Kind.
What worries me is that you are showing signs of proper opposition. No one else in politics is. I think it is a pathetic state of affairs that no one is challenging this government's central narrative. And that is that this coronavirus crisis, this largely non-lethal virus that isn't killing many people, okay, it's a problem. But does it warrant what this government is doing to the country in the cause of trying to prevent, to beat this virus? Does it warrant closing down the economy? Does it warrant shutting people in their homes? Does it warrant wrecking our freedom? Many of us believe this is a disproportionate response, and we are not getting our feelings reported by any politicians in Parliament or elsewhere. Do you challenge the central narrative that the government has gone way over the top with this coronavirus?
We certainly do. Initially we actually supported the lockdown, as many people did. I think remember it's a new virus, and in March anyway, you could probably justify a 3-week lockdown to give the NHS capacity. So at that time, partly for sort of national solidarity reasons, we deliberately didn't criticise the government. None of us did. But the 3 weeks became 7 weeks, and then you had the start of what we've got now, which is a sort of odd stop-go sort of policy where you close down, try and eliminate or suppress the virus, and then you enthusiastically open up and bribe people to go to restaurants and bars, which is
very
curious.
Consistent, is it?
No, it isn't. It's slightly weird. I mean, there was some seasonality which explains that, because they knew they were safe to do that in the summer. But either way, remember, Kevin, that over 500 million trips were made to the pubs and restaurants, and we had no increase and we had no spike in the summer. So it's a very odd policy. And the sad thing is that it's synchronized globally to some extent in the West. And domestically, you're quite right. Actually, there's been no opposition. So we have further lockdowns now, which are compounding this monumental policy error. Thankfully, the parts of the government are reporting what's going on. The important part is the National Audit Office, which is reporting that the cost to the country already is over 200 billion. And that's just escalating. We're just at the start. So you give another 6 months, Kevin. I mean, listen to Sunak's announcement tonight. So the very interesting thing about the Support for Jobs scheme that he announced tonight was that it was 6 months. And that's terrifying, because what they're doing with this stop-go policy is literally wrecking the economy. And I totally reject the idea that it's jobs versus lives. This is nonsense. What they're not getting is the bigger picture.
No, exactly. And one does not want to undermine the tragedy of lives being lost. But I think more and more people in this country, adults, grown-ups, accept that we have a virus. When viruses hit the world and they hit countries, I'm afraid people will die. Obsessively running away from that, obsessively shutting everything down to prevent a small number of deaths, as if that is more important than anything else, I think is catastrophic. I think this government has got to grow up and accept that some people will die. They can't carry on in the way that they are, can they?
No, but this is the real tragedy behind the policy. The real tragedy is that the policy probably isn't saving any lives at all.
Yeah, there's that.
So
as well.
we had it's the critical thing, because, and I said, you remember the cost benefit analysis they did in March? Mm-hmm. Actually, you won't, will you? Because they didn't do one. They didn't do one. So that's the problem. I mean, you could make a justification that you could take an economic hit if you could demonstrate that there were a net saving of lives. Unfortunately, we have nothing of the sort. The Ackland is probably right. The Edinburgh report that was published yesterday is probably right, that the stop-go approach is probably going to cost lives. It doesn't solve, lockdowns don't solve the virus crisis. They just prolong it. And in the option of shelling out literally billions and wrecking businesses by the thousands is costs lives as well. And we know all about the cancer patients that aren't being treated and so on. So actually, what we have is a monumental policy error. I think future historians will look back at this period with amazement. And Kevin, you're quite right. There is no opposition at all. Listen to Annalise Dodds tonight. What did she say in relation to the new proposals? Wasn't enough, she said. She wants even more. So every single stage, the Labour Party, the principal opposition, and the SNP, instead of challenging the strategic position, which they're incapable of doing, they've accepted it, whatever the government wants to do, and say, well, let's just do a little more.
This, William, is infuriating millions of people in this country. I know that from this radio show, from the phone calls we get, from the tweets I see. I'm not pretending that Twitter is a reflection of Great Britain, the country. It's just a subset, but you can see it. People are furious, and what they are saying is there is another way. The government not only does not listen to us, it refuses to even acknowledge that this is being said on a wide-scale basis, and that is that we could go the way of Sweden. We could ask the population to be grown-ups, to be sensible, because we don't need to be treated like children, particularly the vulnerable. The vulnerable are largely old people. These are the most sensible, wise people in the country. They can look after themselves. We can look after them. So protect the vulnerable, save the economy, and let the rest of us get back to normal. There is a different way. And what's infuriating, as I keep saying, is it's not that they're not listening to us, Boris and the gang. They don't even acknowledge that this is being said, and it is being shouted by millions of us.
Yeah, it's very, very strange, but it's partly as a result of parts of the media and the official opposition being basically aligned with the government position. And so, what started off quite early on as one or two journalists, Hitchens and Toby Young and a few others, and then a few of the Oxford scientists and some in Edinburgh and elsewhere, is now becoming much more mainstream. And you can hear it, actually. And I think it's funny because the government claim, of course, that their policy is being driven by science.
Following the science,
Yeah, but it's not. It's actually early on it was driven by political salience. So they felt that the calculation was that we had public support for the position. I think that's very, very foolish because part of the costs bulk of the cost of the policy hasn't actually come in yet. And I think when you get the insolvency practitioners really taking a role next year and the bank's loan books go wrong and you've got 4 million unemployed, then people will say, actually, was this just a catastrophic error? And who stood up against it? Very few. Certainly none of the political class.
What do you think's going on there, William? This supine approach to this situation by Labour, by the SNP, by the Lib Dems, basically, as I said, accepting the government's central narrative that fighting this coronavirus is more important than anything else. It is the single issue we must concentrate at the cost of everything else. Why are they not questioning this? Why are they not saying, well, actually, the coronavirus is the 24th most serious killer in this country? There are 23 conditions that kill more people. Why are they not saying, let's try something different? Because lockdowns don't work. Everything so far hasn't worked, and it doesn't make any sense. As you said, there are now, I think, 12,000 doctors, scientists, and epidemiologists have signed a petition, handed it to the government, and said there is another way. You mustn't keep doing this. Destroying the economy will cause more harm than your efforts to beat the COVID virus ever will.
I think
again, why is Boris just literally like cloth-eared, sticking his fingers in his ears, going la na 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 na, not listening?
Well,
it's unbelievable.
Boris is following the committees he has, so to some extent I can sort of understand that. And a point I made at the time in March was that I don't think any government would have gone against Nerve Tag and Sage. So Peter Hitchens.
I agree with you there, William. I think we were in uncharted territory.
Exactly.
I do not blame them for what they did at the beginning, but I've been blaming them a lot since we came out of lockdown.
No, I get that. I'm more intrigued by the opposition. Let's just have a look at that for a moment. So I think part of it is just basically a weak political class that hasn't got the guts to take a different view. So the safe thing to do when you have proximate deaths from a new disease is to focus on those proximate deaths. And it's actually much harder to take a sort of a slightly more sophisticated, nuanced view and say, okay, what's the balance? So again, look at something like, NICE, the National Institute for Clinical Excellence. What people say, well, you can't put a price on a life. Well, actually, that's what any rational government has to do and does every single year. And NICE has a limit of something like £30,000 per quality adjusted life year. So they already do these calculations. What's been astonishing, Kevin, is that all that stuff has been thrown out of the window. And an economist in the city recently calculated that the quality adjusted life year cost of a COVID death is over £1 million per life year. This is crazy. I mean, the opportunity cost of that is 67 life years for other things. So the whole of government has gone wrong. The whole of the process of taking rational decisions has gone out of the window. I just want to talk about Starmer for a second. Starmer's
Please do.
Yeah, interesting character, because what he has done from the start is I think people are very comfortable doing what they're trained to do. And Starmer's good on detail, and he will look at a case and prosecute it. That's what he's trained to do as a lawyer. And what he does in Parliament is go for some particular issue like testing, some aspect of testing. And he tries to skewer Johnson on a particular thing, and he goes for that. What he's completely incapable of doing is taking a look at a broader picture, a much, much broader, more nuanced question. Are we making a terrible error here?
Yes.
Are you doing the right thing? Or are you literally making a generational failure, which will cost all of the young and many, many people in middle age, literally their taxation, your ability, because they're destroying the tax base. These things will cost people dearly for decades if we're not careful. And Starmer on that has been pretty silent.
Well, that's my point. Our frustration, those of us who are furious with the government, can't hear anyone in Westminster voicing opposition or at least questioning the central narrative of this government, that everything they're trying to do is worthwhile. It's worth what they're doing to get rid of on this futile mission to completely destroy a virus, which they won't succeed in. It's a fallacy. It's just unbelievable. Can I pin you down on a couple of specifics? Matt Hancock, who will not tolerate divisive comments in the House of Commons, you may have noticed. I won't tolerate it. It's divisive. I won't tolerate it. Thanks very much, Health Commissar Hancock. But he is predicating his entire policy, apparently, on the vaccine. He said last week, I think it may take a year, but we'll have to carry on locking down until we get a vaccine, which is a terrible, terrifying prospect. Now, the thing about the vaccine, William, is we discussed this long and hard last night on my show, and the listeners are very engaged with this. This vaccine, on the off chance it's produced, there's talk it may be available by Christmas. I doubt that, but let's say it is. This will be a vaccine, a medicine that was developed in haste to cure a specific problem, an urgent problem. They cannot guarantee that it won't have any long-term side effects because they haven't been able to test it in the way they would normally test a medicine. So they are asking people to roll up their sleeves and be vaccinated by something that they can't guarantee there aren't any side effects, and it is a medicine that's been developed in haste. Do they really think millions and millions and millions and millions of people are going to queue up to have those chemicals put into their system?
I'd be reasonably cautious about this. I think if a vaccine was licensed in this country and it had the backing of the medical authorities here, I think it would probably be safe. Whether people would accept it is
that's my point.
Matter.
I'm not saying it wouldn't be.
And I think, you've got about 70 or 80 different teams around the world trying to go for it. Kevin, you'd ask a slightly different question if you said, would you accept a vaccine from China or Russia? Probably not. So I think if it was licensed here, I think it would be probably wise to accept it. I think whether people will is a different question. I think on the latest polling evidence I've seen, I think significant parts of the population would be resistant, or would at least be keen to let others.
In other words, it's not quite the cure-all that Matt Hancock seems to think it is. We had a virologist on last night. He said, "I'd take the vaccine." I said, "Well, would you let your kids have it?" He said, "Oh, that's a different question."
I think I listened to that interview, and I think that was very revealing. But I think in any case, to try and operate the economy, the entire economy, like a sort of light switch that you can turn off and on. It's a bit like watching children play at shops, watching the government do this. They literally don't know what they're doing to businesses. And people have talked actually, a lot in the past about the narrowing of the political class and the lack of commercial experience that they have. Yeah. And I think this is very revealing, because actually you wouldn't get a policy like this, closing, but saying we'll see you in 6 months. Sorry, it really doesn't. There won't be any some of these businesses in 6 months. When they announced the concessions to VAT payment and things, again, anyone that knows about business would say a lot of those businesses never pay VAT again, because that would be in business. Yeah. So I think this is the problem with waiting for the vaccine thing is a very, very risky endeavour. And I think a more humane, sensible policy is over the North Sea in Sweden. Have a look at that.
Yeah, absolutely. Sweden is showing us the way. Government won't admit that either. William, I wish we had longer. Fantastic talking to you. Thank you so much for your time. Let's talk again soon. That's William Clouston, the leader of the Social Democratic Party, with his views on the paucity of proper opposition to the government right now. It's just not happening in Westminster. I think it's a disgrace.